Everyone around you seems to have access to something you don't. They talk about what God told them this week, the verse that came at exactly the right moment, the peace that settled over them during worship, the sense that he was close. And you sit there, listening, nodding, wondering why the room feels so different for them than it does for you. It's not that you don't believe. It's not that you stopped trying. It's that you've been in the same room, singing the same songs, praying the same prayers, and walking out feeling more alone than when you walked in. And the loneliness isn't just about God. It's about what the silence says about you. Because if everyone else is hearing him and you're not, what does that mean? Is he choosing not to answer you specifically? Or is there something in you that makes you unreachable? You've never said that out loud. It sounds too close to something you're afraid might be true. But it's the question that follows you home from church every Sunday. And it's been following you for longer than you'd like to admit. You tried to fix it. You stayed longer in prayer. You journaled. You fasted. You sat in the front row instead of the back, thinking maybe proximity would help. You raised your hands during worship even when you felt nothing, because someone once told you that the action could precede the feeling. It didn't. You went to the altar. You spoke to your pastor. You read the books people recommend when they want to help but don't know what else to say. And still, nothing. Not silence like peace. Silence like an unanswered call. And the worst part isn't the silence itself. It's watching other people not have to try this hard. The woman in your small group who tears up every week because she felt God speak to her on her morning walk. The man who says he woke up at 3 a.m. and just knew God was telling him something specific. They're not lying. You can see it on their faces, which means something is happening for them that isn't happening for you. And you started to believe you know why. That's not about the method or the timing or the posture. That the variable that's different is you. That there's something about you, some deficiency, some unconfessed thing, some fundamental lack, that puts you on the other side of a door that everyone else seems to walk through without effort. And you've been standing at that door for so long, knocking, wondering if anyone is going to answer. Here's something nobody says in church. The people who seem most connected to God aren't always the ones who feel it the most. They're just the ones talking about it the most. And there's a difference. What gets shared on Sunday morning is the highlight, the moment of clarity, the answered prayer. What doesn't get shared is the Tuesday when nothing moved, the month of dry worship, the prayer that felt like talking to a wall. Nobody puts that in a testimony. So you end up with a room full of people performing a version of spiritual life that only shows the peaks, and a congregation quietly believing they're the only one living in the valley. You're not the only one. You're just the one being honest enough to feel it. But there's something deeper here worth sitting with. Because the assumption underneath all of this, the one doing the most damage, is that God's presence is something you're supposed to feel. That if he's near, you'll know it because of how it registers emotionally. That the absence of sensation means the absence of him. And that assumption is not only wrong. It's the very thing keeping you from seeing what's actually happening. Feeling isn't the mechanism. It's the byproduct. And byproducts don't always show up on time. Think about what happens when your body heals from a wound. You don't feel the cells regenerating. You don't sense the blood clotting, the tissue rebuilding, the inflammation doing exactly what it's designed to do. The process runs completely below the threshold of what you can detect. But it's happening. And one day you look down and the wound is closed. Not because you felt it healing, because it was always healing whether you felt it or not. God's presence in your life is not measured by the emotional weather of a given Sunday. It's not measured by whether worship felt transcendent or flat. It's not measured by whether the person next to you cried while you felt nothing. His presence isn't a feeling he switches on for the people he favors. It's a constant that doesn't require your emotional confirmation to be real. The silence you've been living in isn't evidence that he moved away. It might be evidence that he's doing something in you that doesn't make noise. And the gap between where you are and where they seem to be, that gap isn't proof of rejection. It might be the exact space where the deepest work gets done. There's a difference between a room that's empty and a room that's quiet. They feel the same when you first walk in. Same stillness, same absence of sound, but one of them has nothing in it, and one of them has something in it you haven't found yet. You've been reading the silence in your spiritual life as an empty room. What if it's a quiet one? What if the stillness isn't the absence of God, but the particular texture of how He's present with you right now? Not every relationship sounds the same. Some people experience closeness through conversation, others through being in the same room without needing to fill the space. Some of the most profound moments between two people happen in complete silence. Not because nothing is being communicated, because what's being communicated is too significant for words. What if that's closer to what's happening between you and God than anything you've been told to look for? What if the silence isn't the problem to solve? What if it's the specific language He's using with you right now, and you've been trying so hard to hear words that you missed it? Elijah had just called down fire from heaven. God had shown up in the most undeniable way, publicly, powerfully, unmistakably. And then Elijah ran into the wilderness, alone. So depleted, he asked God to let him die. He had just witnessed the most dramatic divine intervention of his generation. And he sat down under a tree and said, "It's enough. I'm done." And God didn't respond with another fire. He didn't replicate the spectacle. He let Elijah sleep. He sent an angel to bring him food, twice. And then, after the rest, after the food, after the long walk to Horeb, God asked him a question. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah said, "I'm the only one left. Everyone else seems to be on the other side of this. I'm alone." Sound familiar? And then God told him to stand on the mountain. And a great wind came, and an earthquake, and fire. But God was not in any of them. And after the fire, a still small voice. Not the spectacle, the whisper, the one you almost miss if you're too busy looking for the fire. Elijah had spent his whole life chasing the dramatic presence of God, and God showed up in the thing he almost didn't notice. The still small voice wasn't a lesser version of God. It was the version Elijah needed most. And it might be the version you've been missing, not because it isn't there, but because you've been looking for fire. So let's name what's actually been happening. You haven't been forgotten. You haven't been passed over. You haven't been assigned to some category of people God chooses not to reach. You've been measuring His presence by the wrong instrument. And the instrument you borrowed, the one that says you'll feel it when it's real, that you'll know it when it arrives, that instrument was never accurate for everyone. It was accurate for some people some of the time, and you took it as the standard for all people all of the time. And when your experience didn't match the standard, you assumed the problem was you. It wasn't. The problem was the measuring. Here's what's true instead. He hears you, not sometimes. Not when you get the posture right, or the words right, or the consistency right. Every time. The prayers that felt like they dissolved into the ceiling, they didn't. The worship that felt mechanical and hollow, it wasn't invisible. The Sunday you sat in the back and felt nothing and drove home in silence. He was in the car. You are not the person He skips. You are not the exception to His nearness. You are not too far gone, too numb, too broken, too ordinary to be reached. You are exactly the kind of person this has always been for. The ones who aren't sure it's working. The ones who keep showing up anyway. The ones who feel the distance and choose to stay. That's not a sign that something is wrong with you. That's what faith actually looks like from the inside. Before you go, I want you to do one thing. Type these words in the comments. He hears me too. Not because you feel it yet. Maybe you don't. But because some things become true in the saying of them before they become true in the feeling of them. You are not the exception. You never were. And the silence you've been living in, it was never empty. It was never about you being less. It was always just quiet. And He was always in it.